We really appreciate catching up with Victorian Shadow Agriculture Minister Peter Walsh. How are you, Peter?
Very well, thanks, Ricky.
We've got this announcement that came from Agriculture Victoria on Monday about these new farm biosecurity laws. They've been dressed up as being about helping farmers deal with trespass, but there's a little bit more to it, isn't there?
There is. So what AgVic has put out is the fact that that bill has actually now come into being, and those new laws are in place. This has got a long history. It effectively started with the Gippy goat invasion and the fact that a trespasser who came onto the late John Goman's property and stole a goat was only fined $1. And the fact that it just wasn't, was no disincentive there to stop people doing those sorts of actions on private property. So Melina Bath from the Nationals organised a parliamentary inquiry. Long time for the government to respond. Legislation came forward. We believe the legislation is a good start, but doesn't go far enough in that the penalties aren't as severe as they are in New South Wales for a similar crime. And also now the whole issue around farm trespass does not cover licensed river frontages. So it covers land that's under a biosecurity plan of a farmer. But deliberately in the legislation the government has around river frontages, they excluded that from a biosecurity plan. So farmers have no protection on their licensed river frontage land under this legislation. And they are two amendments, the increase in fines and the inclusion of the river frontage licensed land are two amendments that we moved when the bill went through the parliament, but we were defeated by the numbers in the lower house and by the crossbenchers and the Greens in the upper house.
And I guess that's just before we talk a bit more detail about that, on the politics of that with a state election in November, I guess that reinforces that those that care about farm trespass need to think about their vote in both houses.
Most definitely. It is very important that not only there is a change of government in the lower house, but there is also a fact that the quite a few of the independents and minor parties, like the Animal Justice Party, voted with the government on these particular things that mean that farmers don't get the advantage they should have got if this legislation had been drafted correctly.
And when it comes to these biosecurity provisions, it does seem from what Agriculture Victoria is saying, you have to be signed up to a biosecurity plan, apart from the river frontages one we'll get back into, to avail yourselves of these trespassing powers. I mean, isn't trespass whether you're on board with the government's biosecurity laws or not?
That would be our view, Ricky. That would be the Liberal and Nationals' view. The government have used this as a way of getting more farmers to do biosecurity plans. But you're right, private property is private property, and if you trespass, you should be fined. And
so when it comes to this river frontage side of it, so if someone got a right under the law as it is to drive through a farmer's property to get to river frontage, or do they have to use public roads to get to it?
No, they have to use public roads to get to river frontage, and they've always had a right to go there and to fish and to hunt. But what the new regulations that the government brought in now enables people to camp there for up to 28 days. And that's where it becomes a very vexed issue and it's excluded from a farmer's biosecurity plan. So someone could come back from overseas and potentially carry foot and mouth or other diseases and come onto on the licensed river frontage. And the farmer has no way of knowing who is there because they don't have to seek permission. And that could spread a very, very severe disease onto that farmer's land.
And as we saw recently with the foot and mouth disease concerns in Indonesia, it doesn't take much in terms of product you bring in or what you're wearing to bring biosecurity hazards onto a farm.
No, it doesn't. If those particular people had come back from overseas and they illegally brought some meat products with them and they consumed or threw away some of that meat product on that land, it could very easily be the start of a foot and mouth outbreak that could cost Australian agriculture and the Australian economy hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars.
And just with this policy, I take it, given you moved amendments, that you would be taking this to the election. But regardless of the election outcome, will you test the waters in the new parliament on getting those amendments up again to get tougher penalties on trespass?
Well, we did test the parliament again when there was issues around foot and mouth. And what we've given a commitment is that if we are elected to government, we will actually move those amendments as a government and actually bring them into play.
All right, Peter Walsh, not only the Shadow Minister for Agriculture, but Victorian Leader of the Nationals, thanks so much for joining us today on Flow.
Thanks, Ricky.